One major development going on now involves more to do with Rachel Zegler and her attitude towards South Park Studios and Paramount after learning about what they are planning for their upcoming special called the DEI Special.
The last time I had the dream, I was walking down the school hallway, and that's when I started to notice that something's wrong. Everyone I cared about has been systematically replaced. And finally, I want to scream, and I'm like, why are they replacing every single character with someone who is diverse?
Imagine waiting decades to see your all-time favorite classic reimagined for modern audiences, only to have that excitement derailed by endless uproar. For many Disney fans, that's exactly what happened when the beloved 1937 Snow White suddenly became the centerpiece of a very public storm. On one side, the studio insisted they were simply bringing a timeless story into the 21st century. On the other, longtime loyalists argued that the heart of the original was at risk of being erased. At the center of this conflict stands actress Rachel Zegler, whose outspoken nature made her both a point of admiration and a lightning rod for controversy. When she first stepped into the role, some applauded the decision, thrilled to see a rising talent reinterpret an icon. Others were immediately skeptical, saying this new direction clashed with everything that made the 1937 film magical in the first place.
Exactly what they're doing, and that is why we hate the diversity, equity, and inclusion casting and writing in movies.
But little did anyone know just how explosive things would get. Between interviews in which Rachel questioned the original movie's outdated themes and corporate missteps that riled up fans, the tension steadily climbed. Then came a satirical animated show, legendary for skewering pop culture, that decided to poke fun at the entire fiasco. Suddenly, the behind-the-scenes drama exploded into a mainstream spectacle. What was initially marketed as a bold, updated take on a classic fairy tale turned into a saga of canceled appearances, rumored infighting, and waves of internet memes dissecting the controversy. Disney, facing mounting pressure, tried to contain the damage. Fans were left wondering, was this a genuine attempt at refreshing Snow White, or an ill-fated crusade that insulted the charm of the original? This story unravels everything: the high hopes, the backstage tensions, and the comedic jabs that fanned the flames. In the end, the real question looms larger than ever. Can this new Snow White bounce back from the barrage of criticism, or will it remain a cautionary tale of how quickly a classic can turn into a cultural tug-of-war? Long before the world of instant tweets and viral memes, the original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered in 1937 as Walt Disney's first feature-length animated film.
Snow White is the first American feature-length animated movie, 1937. It's one of the most beloved movies of all time. Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed, because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie.
At the time, it was more than just a movie. It was a groundbreaking achievement that proved animated stories could captivate audiences of all ages. Children marveled at the hand-drawn artistry, while adults found themselves swept up in a fairy tale universe that felt both whimsical and deeply emotional. For decades, Snow White stood as a testament to Disney's imaginative power, complete with memorable songs, lovable side characters, and an archetypal tale of innocence threatened by jealousy. Yes, it was a product of its time, reflecting certain social norms and narrative styles from the early 20th century, but that didn't stop generations from cherishing its delicate blend of humor, romance, and moral lessons.
It was the first animated film that had the kind of Disney magic that had depth, that had absolute, it was riveting, and it's based, of course, on a Brothers Grimm story.
Fast forward to the present day, and the conversation around reworking older Disney stories has grown increasingly complex. Audiences now demand a more modern perspective that addresses issues of agency, diversity, and relevance. Disney's leadership saw an opportunity. Take this iconic fable and infuse it with contemporary themes. The company's official line was that they wanted to do justice to the spirit of the original, while updating certain plot points to resonate with modern viewers, especially young women who want to see themselves as active heroes, not passive onlookers.
No longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That laugh.
That is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
But this balancing act proved tricky. Devotees warned that any major overhaul might undermine the original's charm, while others hoped this remake would finally remove the fairy tale cliches. In a landscape where even small missteps trigger internet backlash, the stakes couldn't have been higher. Little did Disney realize, though, that the loudest voices of dissent were about to emerge from far more than just upset fans, and would soon grab the spotlight in spectacular fashion. Rachel Zegler had already turned heads with her breakout roles elsewhere. Critics praised her singing talent and raw emotional depth, making her a high-priority choice for leading parts. When Disney announced she'd be stepping into Snow White's glass slippers, some corners of the internet erupted in applause. At last, a fresh face ready to bring nuance and relatability to one of Disney's earliest heroines. Yet the controversies began almost immediately. On social media, a faction of fans questioned why an actress of Colombian descent would portray a character famously nicknamed for her skin as white as snow.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got an
He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
thing that was trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
Supporters, however, argued that a fairy tale is fictional at its core, and that Disney's own lineage of princesses could stand to be more inclusive.
In addition to that, there was already an uproar about her being cast as Snow White because she is not Caucasian, she is a Latina, she is half Colombian, and so people were like, why were you cast in the first place? We just had a black Little Mermaid, now we're having a Latina Snow White, and she is literally called Snow White, this doesn't make sense.
Then came Rachel's interviews, where she'd mentioned how the 1937 film felt outdated to her. She hinted that the new version would highlight an empowered heroine who isn't just dreaming of romance, but of leadership and personal ambition. These remarks were seen by some as refreshing, but others perceived them as dismissive toward a classic that helped shape Disney's entire legacy. As her quotes circulated, a wave of early warnings surfaced online. Meme pages mocked her stance, while dedicated fans posted side-by-side comparisons of the original's iconic scenes and the rumored changes. Tension thickened when it was rumored that internal voices at Disney were urging her to tone down the commentary. They feared that critiquing the source material so openly could alienate longtime Disney loyalists. Rachel, for her part, seemed undeterred. She doubled down on her idea that any remake worth doing should reflect contemporary realities, especially when it comes to how female characters view love, power, and self-worth.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
The right to buy Cosby sweaters?
Come on.
That's the face
Well,
of a serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
But her assertiveness would soon collide head-on with a variety of corporate constraints, and with an entirely unexpected satire that would put the spotlight on her words more intensely than ever. While Rachel's public statements became tabloid fodder, Disney executives were battling internal headaches of their own. Adapting a revered property is always risky, but the stakes multiplied when rumors started swirling about friction on set. It wasn't just Rachel's unfiltered remarks causing concern. Word spread that she and co-star Gal Gadot, cast as the wickedly glamorous evil queen, weren't exactly on the best of terms. Speculation reached a boiling point during an awards ceremony where the two actresses appeared on stage but barely interacted. Observers couldn't help but note the stiff body language, leading to endless online chatter about a possible feud. Some claimed Rachel felt overshadowed by Gal's star power, while others believed Gal was uneasy about the new direction Rachel was pushing for. Meanwhile, Disney's leadership worried these rumors could overshadow the entire production. Multiple insiders described tense staff meetings where everyone tried to figure out how to keep the film's promotional narrative under control. Bob Iger, who had returned as Disney CEO, was famously good at smoothing over corporate bumps. But this situation seemed especially volatile. Adding to the stress, several high-profile talk shows and public appearances set up for Rachel were quietly scrapped. Officially, the reasoning was scheduling conflicts, but those in the know believed Disney feared more unscripted remarks would stoke already blazing debates. This tug-of-war between a star who wanted to speak her mind and a studio desperate to avoid bad press set the stage for an even larger meltdown.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
I was scared of the original cartoon. I think I watched it once and then I never picked it up again. I watched it for the first time in probably 17 years.
Behind the scenes, some staff members found it ironic that Snow White, a story about innocence and danger, was turning into a behind-the-curtain lesson in corporate politics. The tension grew daily. And nobody could have guessed that an animated satire known for skewering any cultural fiasco was about to take direct aim at this unraveling drama. When the creators of South Park catch wind of a cultural flashpoint, it usually takes only a matter of weeks before they transform it into comedic gold.
And this started with the movie star Rachel Zegler, who I believe would be categorized as a loudmouth dope.
So, when fans noticed a brand new episode teasing a storyline involving woke reboots and strong-willed actresses, they immediately suspected Snow White was in the crosshairs. Sure enough, the cartoon didn't hold back. The episode portrayed a fictional film remake strikingly similar to Snow White, featuring an actress who bashes the classic for being obsolete and regressive. She's shown clashing with a wide-eyed studio boss, ranting about saving society, and ultimately overshadowing every co-star who doesn't align perfectly with her vision. The parallels were too precise to miss, and viewers quickly recognized it as a direct riff on Rachel Zegler's public statements. Within hours, social media was ablaze. Fans of South Park marveled at how swiftly the show had latched onto the real-life controversy. Disney supporters criticized the episode for what they saw as an oversimplification of Rachel's intentions. Meanwhile, those already disgruntled by the new direction for Snow White took the parody as validation, claiming it encapsulated their frustrations perfectly. Reports soon leaked that Rachel was fuming over the portrayal. She allegedly felt the satire portrayed her as a caricature, mocking her genuine passion for updating a classic that she believed desperately needed a modern perspective. Disney executives, for their part, chose silence. Historically, South Park only escalates its jokes when the targets respond, and the studio's public relations team clearly wanted to avoid turning a spotlight into a bonfire. Yet, their silence did nothing to stem the fallout. In fact, the parody started trending, bringing in a whole new crowd of onlookers who had only vaguely heard of the Snow White drama. Now, even casual observers knew the controversy by name and had strong opinions on it. The South Park episode was a catalyst, kicking off a chain reaction that left Disney scrambling. First came the memes, images of Rachel side by side with her animated doppelganger. Then came viral tweets pointing out the eerie similarities between her real interviews and the cartoon's exaggerated rants. Critics and fans alike dissected every line, hunting for parallels that might reveal just how closely the show had followed real-life events. Meanwhile, Rachel's social media accounts turned unusually cryptic. She didn't explicitly mention South Park or Snow White in her posts, yet the tone was unmistakably frustrated. Some of her fans rallied to defend her, accusing the cartoon of punching down on someone who simply wants to challenge outdated tropes. But the general sentiment leaned toward humor.
As an actor, you don't get to dictate anything. You don't get to dictate if a film actually happens. You don't get to dictate when it is shot, how it is shot, if you can ever speak about it to the public.
After all, South Park is famous for its incisive commentary, and many saw this as just another well-aimed shot at a high-profile figure. Disney tried to keep the situation contained, but found itself in a tight spot. If it condemned the show, it risked drawing more attention. If it tried to control the public narrative, it might confirm the exact corporate meddling that South Park had lampooned.
I mean, it's about a love story because that's what the point of the film is, and I'm sorry that chivalry and a man pursuing you is now deemed as stalking, which now it's kind of making sense why men are opting out of the dating scene. God forbid a woman dream about true love. We're all just sitting around here, maybe I could be president one day. I hate men, I just want to be president. That screams Disney princess. Oh my God, I'm literally getting enraged. Once again, I feel like I'm back in 2022.
Meanwhile, every day seemed to bring fresh rumors. Entire sequences being reshot, choreographers called back to rework musical numbers, and script tweaks aimed at softening some of the dialogue that might come off as too abrasive. Behind closed doors, cast and crew were said to be on edge. The friction between Rachel and Gal Gadot hadn't dissipated, and the swirling controversies only made professional collaboration more awkward. Some insiders whispered that the tension on set felt more dramatic than anything happening on camera. Whether or not that was an exaggeration, the public's focus remained locked on the meltdown, turning a once-celebrated project into a headline-grabbing fiasco with no clear end in sight.
I feel like if you are taking on the most iconic Disney role ever, genuinely, this was the most prolific Disney film, I feel like you should kind of have some sort of reverence for the original production.
As the controversy ballooned, rumors began piling up about the actual state of Snow White's production. Whispered accounts suggested that entire sections of the film were being chopped or extensively edited, all in an effort to distance Disney from the uproar.
It was supposed to come out like a year and a half ago, and then we went after them so hard because of their variety of ridiculous sins that they actually went into full-scale reshoots on Snow White when we announced that we had a competitor.
A few insiders even hinted that the final script had shifted dramatically since filming began, removing certain pointed lines or doubling down on the story's romantic elements to appease disillusioned fans. At the executive level, Bob Iger found himself under increasing pressure to salvage more than just this movie. He needed to protect the Disney brand. Months of negative headlines had already haunted the studio, from underperforming sequels to controversies around other live-action adaptations. With each new revelation about Snow White, shareholders grew more concerned that the company's famed ability to spin a magical narrative was fracturing. Rachel Zegler, aware of the swirling chatter, reportedly felt cornered. She had signed on hoping to champion a progressive version of a classic, but was now portrayed, fairly or not, as a self-righteous provocateur. Meanwhile, some in her camp questioned Disney's decision to pull her from promotional events. Rumors of potential legal challenges briefly surfaced, though nothing concrete materialized. Still, the very idea that the lead actress might sue her own studio was enough to dominate fan forums. Then there was Gal Gadot, whose perspective mostly stayed private. Speculation ran wild that Gal's role had been cut back or simplified. Some said it was Rachel's demand, others insisted it was Disney's choice to reduce any potential conflict between the lead characters. The result was an environment of uncertainty. Crew members waited for directives that never came, while fans online contributed to a rumor mill that churned out increasingly outlandish theories. In the midst of it all, people wondered how, if at all, Disney could turn the tide. Could reshoots repair not only the narrative issues, but also the film's reputation? Or was the damage already so deep that no amount of editing could remove the lingering stain? After months of drama and a barrage of memes, petitions, and gossip, Snow White 2025 stands at a crossroads. It began as a bold remake aimed at bringing a treasured fairy tale into a new era. The original film's legacy was monumental, and for some viewers, any update would have been a step too far. For others, modern sensibilities demanded a fresh vision, one where the princess doesn't simply wait around for a true love's kiss. Rachel Zegler became the unexpected face of this entire struggle. In many ways, she exemplifies the challenge of balancing respect for a time-honored classic with the desire to break new ground. Her outspoken comments and unwavering belief in a more empowering narrative might have endeared her to forward-thinking fans, yet they also ignited criticism from purists who felt dismissed. When South Park weighed in, the controversy vaulted beyond the usual Disney fan circles, transforming into a cultural conversation about reboots, corporate caution, and creative freedom. Now, audiences are left in suspense. Will the finished film deliver a thoughtful blend of modern values and classic fairy tale wonder? Or will it crumble under the weight of its own negative publicity, overshadowed by rumors of on-set strife and comedic ridicule? If nothing else, this saga has underscored the pitfalls of reimagining beloved stories in an age of lightning-fast media. In the end, the fate of Snow White 2025 hinges on whether viewers can look past the commotion and judge the film on its own merits. Perhaps it will emerge as a forward-thinking adaptation, or maybe it will be remembered as a miscalculated gamble that never found its footing. One thing is certain, from Rachel's passionate stance to the studio's frantic moves, it's a cautionary reminder of how delicate the art of updating a classic can be, and how easily it can tip from exhilarating reinvention into a public relations nightmare.